Well, again, man, thanks so much for taking the time to chat. Do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me, by the way. My name's Scott Rosekrans. I work at Zoic Studios. I've been there for 15 years. I work as a CG supervisor, but also dabble as a VFX supervisor. I also I'm currently running the role of the CG supervisor of the Realtime department, the Realtime Group we have over there. And I'm also a teacher. So on the side, I'd like to educate and spread the love and spread the word and so yeah, it's everyone has a million LinkedIn titles and stuff. So I'm trying to keep it narrow. I do lots of things. I've had a long career at Zoic there and do lots of different things, but enjoy what I'm doing right now with real time stuff.
Cool. I love that. Actually, just really quickly, do you ever work with Ben Liu? I was just chatting with him last night, so that kind of popped into mind, but I think you guys might have, he used to work at Zoic back on Fringe and all that. So
yeah, the name sounds familiar. There, so many people have come through there.
yeah,
And I worked with a ton of great people over the years.
Zog's crazy in the sense that, yeah, there's so much talent that's passed through those doors over and over again in each of the offices. So I'm just curious in general, like for you starting out, did you always expect to land in some kind of creative role, or is it something that you kind of discovered later on in life?
No, it's funny. Like my approach to visual effects in the industry does not track with what you normally hear from a lot of artists and stuff, where you get like, oh, this such and such movie or such and such video game got me, I fell in love with it or whatever. No, I grew up in South Carolina, in rural South Carolina, like, middle of nowhere. And it was, work was work. There was no art. Art was not work. Right. And so I really did enjoy doing art. I loved it. And, I was all through high school and stuff. I did, drawing and all the theater classes and all that stuff. And when it came time to go to college, I, of course, took on and off a few years of college and stopped and started a few times. And I couldn't find anything I wanted to get into, right? And then it was only when I got to college where I found a graphic design course, which I realized I didn't like graphic design necessarily, but that was the first spark of like, oh, maybe I could do art for money, and it's, I realized I didn't like graphic design and that's all they had there. So my family and I took the tour down to SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design. And that when I toured the library there, that was the last year they had the 3D department as part of the library. And I was like, oh, that's a thing. That's, you can possibly make money, like, cutting edge technology. That sounds like it's, a job that is worthy of making money, but it's also art, so that, like, to me, it was always about work. Like it had to, I still couldn't get it out of my head that like art could be a money making, a career without on its own, right? So having that attachment to computers and cutting edge technology and stuff like that, I jumped in. And it was the first year at SCAD that I was there, was the first year that they had what is now a very massive facility for their 3D art department. I actually graduated with the last of the generalized degrees of just 3D animation and stuff. And so like, I really enjoyed it. I gravitated to it. I thrived in it. To me, it was the perfect blend. There was the art, but there was also, it was hard. I enjoyed doing hard things, but not to the point where it gets boring. So it was hard enough to keep me interested, but also every time I got bored, like, it was like, oh, but you're making cool shit at the end of the day. So I had a real appreciation for all things technical. And then, it wasn't really like I was driven by, like I was saying, it was like the movies in
Jurassic Park wasn't your catalyst.
Yes, exactly. There wasn't any one thing that sort of pushed me to this.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm always fascinated by the answer to that, just because, again, like everyone has a different story. And as you're saying, like, I think it's always a bit of a shock and awe. It's like, holy crap, I could get paid to do this thing that I love doing, opposed to, brutally working a blue collar job day in, day out. It's interesting to kind of to see the different paths that kind of all lead to the same place.
Totally. And I feel like I still have a bit of a blue collar viewpoint on the whole thing, right? Sure. Because like throughout my career, I started out as a rigging TD, and then I moved into like doing some dynamics and stuff, and a generalist role, doing some lighting and doing some animation and doing all this stuff. And they're like, and moved from there into CG Supervisor and VFX Supervisor, all this stuff. And I've started to move farther and farther away from the art. I'm not on the box anymore. I don't do the actual art. And so like that evolution there, I never lost interest, right? Because it's always, I'm focused on the work. That's what's interesting to me. It's just what the work is changing. It's interesting to kind of see like how some people thrive at that. Some people are like, nope, I just want to be an artist. I just want to do art, so.
I've seen so many people move to, let's say, a lead or supervisor position and then realize like, yeah, I don't want to do that. So just like get me back on the box. And even I remember there was one movie I worked on once where I went from ILM to just being a lead on a project. I remember the VFX Soup was like really worried, like, are you happy just doing this? I'm like, I'm not going to meetings. I'm not working on bids. I'm not dealing with, like, this is cool. I'm putting headphones on for the first time in years. So it can be refreshing sometimes to get back on the box.
Totally. Yeah. And I do still from time to time try to find those jobs where I can put the headphones on, and like that was, I really miss, like, cause I taught rigging at Noman for several years. And that was always like, we got to the point where I was talking about weight painting. I was like, look, the next 2 weeks are going to suck, but you're going to, just put the headphones on and just enjoy it,
That's right. What's your experience been like with kind of transitioning off the box? I kind of feel like for some people, it is one of those things of like, is this a bad move? Am I actually kind of swimming away from land? Am I going to 2 years from now be stuck in a place where I don't have any skill set anymore? Like, obviously that's not the case, but I think there's a natural fear for some people that could be a thing. I'm always shocked personally that I don't do 3D for 6 months or even sometimes 12 months. And it's like riding a bicycle. It's like, oh yeah, like hotkey still works, so I'm good. What's your experience been like with that?
Yeah, it's great. And to back it up a little bit, I do want to talk, a little bit about how, my evolution has taken place all in one place, right? I've been at Zoic my entire career. 15 years I've been working here. I started off as an intern at Zoic, and like I said, when in that internship role, I was there right when we were transitioning from Lightwave into Maya. Right. So I got in on the ground.
You guys are late
floor.
bloomers though, because you came on like 2008, 2000. Well, when did you come on?
2007, I think was our internship. Yeah, 2007, 2008, and they had a couple of.
Did no one tell you Lightwave stopped a decade before?
Yeah, exactly. There was a still. I think it had a handle on that place for a few years after that. I think 2011 or 12 or stuff. There were still people like here and there, kind of. I think the Terminator was the last big show that we did with. The Lightwave was still kind of the main front and center there. And then CSI, when after those kind of fizzled out, it was, okay, we're fully Maya now. But no, I got in right as we were, we had a couple of Maya animators, and I guess they didn't, at the time realize it needed rigging support. And I was like, hey, wait, I rig. So, internship turned into rigging position, turned into, I was the sole rigger for both LA and Vancouver offices very early on for a couple of years. And then it got to the point where we had enough, we needed more. And a lot of, when the whole flight to BC happened way back then as well, where like a lot of, work was the tax breaks first hit. And it was, that was the first time where I was like, hey, I still feel like I have value here. And they were like, you absolutely do. And so, kudos to them for allowing me to grow and kind of move and change. And I started doing dynamics, generalist work, lighting, and all of that stuff. Eventually that led to, yet again, them allowing me to like grow leaps and bounds and not, run a commercial as a CG supervisor. We were just super busy. And I was like, guys, I can do this. And they were like, yeah, we think you can. So, they gave me the shot, and it worked out. And it's been, snowballs, don't look back, right? And it's just, the rest has been history, as they say. And so I was CG suping for a long time. They've given me shots to go out on set, always happens to go well. I don't know what I'm doing right, but something's working. I'm always sort of, growing and expanding and learning and still being on the box, even though as I transitioned into this purely supervisor role, there's still, parts of me that are like doing some of that work, right? And trying to be a generalist, trying to learn more. There's times that you got to swallow your pride and say, hey, I'm struggling at this. There's people that are out there that are better than me to do it. Maybe I should bring them in and let them do the work, and I just supervise and and learn from them. But then maybe the next time, I've got their tricks now. I can we can do a little bit better and maybe have a smaller footprint in terms of team. But no, always always trying to grow and always trying to iterate. And so there's never a dull moment, because I remember there was a time we were doing it was Final Fantasy. It was 20 commercials in 40 weeks, all 60 seconds, all full CG out of mine. Wow. And then so it was just to the wall, like completely just nonstop development of shots. And we had a massive team, and there was no way I could have done any of the work. And it was an amazing team. And it's just, it was just an insane amount of like, and that was the one moment where I was like completely off the box for like 8 months, just showing up and doing dailies all day, every day. Even then I was still trying to help, stay engaged and stay active and showing people how to do things and, coming up with tools to and help the pipeline and, help things run smoother. Then it's like supervising for a long time. And then, right at the moment where I started to feel the stagnation kind of seeping in, right? That's when, the whole, like right before the shutdown too, this was right around, 2019 or so, we had a moment where there was a show that we were trying to deliver this sort of epic looking, this like epic, map painting style, several layers deep, this very large environment. And we were thinking, hey, this would be a great opportunity to start, maybe try using Unreal, right? It was perfect place to kind of start to see if that works for us. And it didn't that first time. It absolutely did not, but the spark was kind of laid there. We were like, this could work, right? It was a bunch of us. It was me and another supervisor that were just trying to see if we could get it to work. And it didn't work for that show. Fine, great. But we can see the potential, like we didn't know what we were doing, right? And so again, by the good graces of the Zoic management team, they invested in us, and they sent the other supervisor and myself, they signed us up to go take classes over at Epic. They were, in the Sony building at the time, and giving out, well, not giving out. They were, at the time it was the reverse fellowship. We had to pay to go there, right? And we took a few classes in Unreal, and a lot of people actually joined us, and then, it kind of grew organically out of there, and we started to like, we think this could be a thing. And this was, again, 2019. And then the shutdown, of course, happened, and we had a little time on our hands, and we just dove head first. We were like, this, we can make this work. And then, get a couple of jobs, start doing Unreal in them. We found ourselves in with an LED wall in our hands. So we went and did virtual production for a little while, ran a few commercials off of that. Very early on was like, hey guys, I really enjoy doing this. I really like, put me in this department, let me run this department or whatever. And so that's sort of, where I find myself now, 2.5, God, wait a minute, almost 4 years. Holy crap. Can somebody stop time? Because it's almost been 4 years since I started using the Unreal Engine. And yeah, we've got 35, 40 people in our department now. We've delivered, I think, upwards of 35 or 40 jobs as well, all through Unreal Engine in some form, whether it gets handed off back to the traditional pipeline, or if we're doing final pixels, or if we're doing, ICVFX, or, we're delivering jobs for live action green screen keying now. AR, XR jobs. We're doing some VR work as well. Like it's wide ranging. It just, when I was working back in the commercial department doing that, we were trying to expand into other spaces and things like that. We were doing some AR, VR work, but nothing like this. This is just like the balloon has just popped and expanded wide open, so.
Pretty amazing. I had Andrew Olaf on not too long ago, chatting about all things Zoic, and I was pretty impressed at how quickly you guys embraced Unreal as being like, this is the future. And I guess like for you, do you mind walking through a bit of like a standard kind of, let's say, a VFX pipeline for working with virtual production, let's say? Because I feel like for a lot of people who haven't done the Unreal Fellowship, this is still kind of like I understand what I'm looking at on the screen, but I don't understand the process. What are your kind of top level thoughts on the overall process and how it differs from a regular final render inside of 3D?
Yeah, totally. Well, it's different. It was interesting having, had the experience very early on. Like I said, when I came in, there was the Maya pipeline was just, being born, right? And then I was working with an amazing technical artist, Michael Romy, who, I think would be a great person to bring onto your podcast, by the way. He's worked at all kinds of amazing places, NVIDIA, Disney, he's done a lot of great stuff, but he helped build the foundation of a lot of the pipeline that we still use today at Zoic. But he didn't necessarily fully take me under his wing. I kind of bugged him, I think, a lot more than anything else, but I kind of just was always there and like giving him ideas and like, maybe we should do this and that kind of stuff. And So having seen the pipeline, I've been there again a long time. So I understand every evolution of the pipeline because I was there when it was launched, right? And so knowing fully how that pipeline works and then having to do it again fresh, right? We got a brand new, not just a brand new piece of software in here. This is a whole new paradigm, a whole new way of working, right? It's like completely turned up on its end, and things are just different, right? And so having to come up with tools for integrating the Unreal Engine to the pipeline is also sometimes a fool's errand, right? Sometimes it makes more sense to have the pipeline integrate to Unreal Engine, right? And because there's some things that it does really well, and you don't want to hinder that or harness that. Like you want to use it like it's supposed to be used, right? Which I guess that goes the same for Houdini, Maya, all the other ones, right? So the tough thing for us, really, when we're building up the Unreal pipeline and then trying to get things, moving, iterating as fast as possible, moving as smoothly as possible, has been our security protocols, right? Because it's such next gen stuff. It's all connected to the internet. Like the metahumans is one of those things we're going through right now. It's like, how do we do this, right? It's so simple. You go to the MetaHuman creator, which is a website. You create a MetaHuman, and then boom, it shows up in your bridge. Well, you take that into a studio setting. You have no internet.
Disney.
You have no bridge. Yeah, exactly. We had to download the entire Megascans library to our server so that we can use it offline, because Bridge just gets constantly connected to the internet. Unreal is constantly connected. Bridge and Unreal can't talk to each other, and so it's infinitely more complicated than a boutique kind of situation where you're just working on your desktop, right? But we make it work. So that's like a big focus of a lot of the tools is just integrating and things like that. I still approach it the same as when I was doing CG supervising for episodics and commercials and things like that. It's just I'm tweaking things slightly because the process is mildly different, right? I still need the same amount of people. It's just that the people that I'm relying on now are a little less linear. They have a little bit more skill set. I have previz artists that know animation. They go fully through the animation pipeline there. I've got asset artists that not only they build assets inside of Maya, Houdini, wherever, bring them into the engine, but they can also work with shaders and stuff in the engine. They sometimes know lighting and things like that. You can't be as specialized as you could with the Maya and Houdini pipelines, right? You can, but it's a very niche market for that. You've got some of those VAD shops like ILM and Happy Mushroom that are very specialized, and you can have people that are very good at what they do. But some of the people that do that they're only they're specialized in layout. I have so many different projects, such a wide range of projects and stuff that layouts and assets integration and asset upresing and lighting and things like that is just a small portion of what we do, and so that runs its course really quickly, where I'm like, oh well, that's great, but can you maybe make some design this cool shader that does this, or maybe we need some particles so I don't have the sort of resources to hire specialty artists in every single tiny thing that Unreal can do, because it can do so much, right? Like we've got the entire traditional pipeline inside of our sandbox here, but we've also got more, right? There's more things that Unreal can do that takes you outside of that traditional VFX sandbox, right? And so I like the term I've been using in interviews a lot lately when I'm trying to find new people is the master of one, right? It's the whole generalist mantra is
you get jack of all trades and master of none.
Jack of all trades, master of none. But I'm like, no, what I want is a jack of all trades, master of one. Be really good at one thing, but know a little bit of everything else, right? Like it doesn't have to be everything else. Know a little bit else of something else, right?
I like that. I'm curious about that too, because you started as a generalist, and I think you're like, my whole opinion is that I personally think everyone should be a generalist, learn the lay of the land first, because it also is something that you don't know what you don't know, but there might be certain things that come along. You're like, oh, I never knew that I like dynamics, or I didn't know that, ZBrush was a thing. Like, this is really fun. I think it is necessary at some point to start specializing, but it doesn't, I think most people get confused by that means that you're only doing one thing. But I think it's more that, as you're saying about master of one, but really still having surrounding skill sets. Like I think it's more that if you do everything, people aren't really going to know how to assign you to something. But if you can do everything, but you excel at lighting, or you excel at rigging, character modeling, whatever it might be, at least then mentally people can place you. They know like that's your strength, but they also know that they can utilize you elsewhere. Your whole path, like especially starting as a generalist, but moving into being more of a character TD, then moving into Unreal, which is like a whole other area. Like, what are your thoughts on being a generalist starting out, and kind of like the path for an artist to kind of move up in their career?
Yeah, I mean, like I actually came from, I started with rigging and then moved more into a generalist role. And I think that, that could help it, for people that are just getting into it, keep it from being overwhelming, right? It can be overwhelming. There's a lot to do. Like, I mean, when you're creating something in CG and in VFX and stuff, you're literally mimicking the world, all of it, like every aspect. You gotta, like, I know so much about things. We all do, right? We all know, as VFX artists, we know more about like dumb little things that we never thought we would know about, just because we've had to recreate it once, and like birds, right? Like, for just as an example, like we've done how many commercials and shows with birds in them, and like having to know how like the wing folds up, or like or corn. We did a lot of commercials
corn as well.
Corn, yes, exactly. Like we did so many commercials for like GMOs and corn back in the day that like I know way more than I would ever think I would have known in this part of my life about corn and what the dirt in the field should look like at different times of the year and all of that good stuff. The generalization will come, I think, as you gain more experience and just sort of embrace it and lean into it, because it is an ever evolving thing. There is, I think, smaller and smaller windows for people to be hyper specialized because things are moving faster, just as competition ticks up, and like streaming services has done us all a kind of a service, right? Because there's a glut of things going on now. It's not just Fox, ABC, NBC, or all the big names that are taking up all the airwaves, and then it's not just the big picture shops for features and things like that where you can have very specialized people that only do one certain thing. I think animation is one of the last bastions of that. But with the glut of content there is now, things are speeding up, and people need to be more nimble because the shops need to be more nimble, right? Like we can only, like I was saying, like any given studio can only hire so many people, and having people that are nimble is going to pay off in dividends for everyone. And so like if I were getting into it now, I mean, yeah, it's always hindsight's 2020, right? Like knowing what I know, right? But yeah, I would definitely say try to find one thing that really enjoys you, and then figure out what steps in that pipeline are either in front of you or behind you, and maybe pick up on some of that, right? If you're a rigging TD, like I had that, I was terrible for the first, couple of years. I loved to rig, but I hated to animate. Like that doesn't make any sense, right? Like I'm not going to use the end product that I'm trying to make for somebody, and then like get confused when they complain about it. It's going to be important moving forward, especially with the things moving the way they are, moving into real time, whether it is Unreal or Unity or any of the other game engines that are out there. If you're working in games and stuff like that, it's impossible to be specialized in just a single thing.
Just in general though, like the more kind of boxed in you are, it's very hard for you to grow, because especially as certain things evolve, it might become easier and easier and easier. But if you're not growing as an artist and you're not keeping your finger on the pulse, then it limits you and where you can go further down the line, which is so important.
And I think software design really plays a large part into that, really, because like if we take, for instance, Unreal Engine, right? It is so easy to navigate almost every component of that once you get comfortable working and navigating in that space. Like if you know how to search for the details you're looking for, the attributes you're looking for in layout, you can also find that they use that same methodology for like particles or simulation or things like that. Things are very easy to find once you sort of start to see the web, right? Like, and start to see drink the Kool-Aid, I guess. Once you have those purple glasses on and you drank the purple Kool-Aid, and then you see, you get a feel for it. It's like, I want to just think of it in, terms of questions. What do I want to do? Oh, I want to do this. Okay, I can go, I know there's a place for that. If I go there and just check things out, and Unreal makes it very easy to kind of navigate and find your way, and like to find the thing that you're looking for, and say maybe it's this button, and it's I think that's definitely a as opposed to like there's other softwares out there where they just don't integrate. Like they purchase all this stuff and there's plugins and stuff, but every plugin that Unreal has is integrated. It looks like everything else in Unreal, and it acts like everything else in Unreal, and it's not a completely foreign place that you need 17 tutorials to pick up.
In terms of Unreal, like, are there any good go-to resources that you'd recommend for people to learn and get up to speed quickly with Unreal? And again, I realize there's a lot of information out there, but like at least from what you've observed.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the other thing too, is that there is a glut of information. As a supervisor, I do get asked some questions where, and this is a part of being a generalist too, right? Like you can't remember everything.
Yeah, it shocks me when someone says that they can't find the answer to something, because like, I don't need to know everything. I know Google will have the answer, and
Absolutely.
If you're not able to Google something, then like it's a serious problem.
No, totally. I mean, there's so many times that I guess just people just assume that
they think it's beneath them is the other thing.
Right, there's that. It's like I'm just going to ask a human because I can't just go to Google for this. But there's so many times I get asked questions, so I'm just Googling off to the side, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Like I've done it before, but it's left the memory banks long ago. That's right. And it's just got to get that refresher. But yeah, I mean, in terms of resources, Unreal they have their own. So if you are looking for resources for learning Unreal, they do a great job of hosting a ton of great content on their own learning portal. There is tons of great YouTubers out there. Just literally search up the thing you're looking for and find like the top few rated videos. There's some dreck out there. You definitely got to filter through a little bit. I find a ton of stuff that way. There's a few places I could recommend. One of them I happen to be teaching at, and on nights and weekends. CG Pro. I just went through this past year and did this is another thing that's amazing to me, is that like the invigoration that this whole endeavor into real time has given me. It's like really kind of rejuvenated. Like it's given me that spark again, right? Like I would have never gone through and done the whole masterclass for Autodesk Maya. I love Maya. I've been using it for 25 years now. Like I was, Maya 3.1 when I started it. And, but I never felt the need to go do like, get the authorship. But I went through the Unreal Authorized Instructor thing this year, which is it was tough. It was really tough. They do a good job of sort of gatekeeping that to make sure that they have people that really know the engine through and through before they give them the certificate there, to make sure that they're authorized to instruct. And I work with CG Pro to teach, and it's a couple of people that started literally, like not literally in their basement, but in their backyard or whatever. And
Noman started in the basement. Alex Alvarez, I still remember videos of him as like a teenager or early 20s, like long hair, sitting in what looked like his mom's basement or something, doing Maya VHS cassettes. So
yeah, dude, yeah, it's great. And yeah, I had a great time.
I still give him shit about that, by the way.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I taught for 6 years at Noman. I loved it there. It was amazing. Yeah, the resources are easier to find, and you like one of the things I was going to say is that you don't necessarily need one of the big school, like kudos to SCAD. I owe a lot to them. Kudos to Noman. I owe a lot to them. But it's getting, and they are doing a good job of keeping up with it and staying nimble and offering standalone courses in it, because that's kind of what you have to do now. And that's what CG Pro is doing. That's what we're doing. It's just look, you want the fellowship experience, even though they're not offering it anymore, come to us. We'll put you right through it. I've been teaching more of the advanced stuff. Like we got blueprints, we've got a character course, we've got IC VFX. We did an LED shoot for part of our class very recently, and it's super fun. It's super rewarding, super challenging. But it is a good resource if people want to. There's tons of them. There's CG Spectrum. There's lots of like little shops like that don't cost you an arm and a leg in 4 years of your life, So if I were getting into it now, the resources are just infinitely more accessible like I assume that the recruiter has looked to see if they've got a college degree or something like that. I don't look at that. I look at the person. I look at the work. I'm not looking for a college. I don't care where you went to school.
Yeah, I'll just add to that because it is kind of interesting because that's something I'm experiencing now for the first time, is that hiring engineers is a whole other thing. I'm building out an engineering org at the moment, and that's slightly different, where suddenly schools do come into play somewhat.
Right.
But you're right, like you know, if anything, going to school, things like that is a great way to find yourself, make some friends and things like that. But like, what's going to get you hired is you're real, and more importantly, connections. But ultimately, you're real. It's not what you've studied and what you know, it's what can you do for me? Can I put you in a chair tomorrow and start knocking out shots? Or, do I look at your resume and say that's very impressive, but you can't actually, put that into action?
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing too is that like it wasn't that bitter of a pill to swallow to realize that I, as a 10 or 15 even year veteran of the industry, like I still need to take classes. Totally. Learning Unreal was a challenge. It was intimidating at first. It's a lot, but once that ball started rolling, it was just like, oh, I see not just, and this is the first time where it's not an opportunity for, necessarily career or, learning. It was really about like, like I said earlier, I had a very blue collar approach to things. It was always about the work, and it was always about making more money or just, having a stable job or whatever. This was the first time in my career where I was like, oh shit, there's art here. I can do cool things too. I don't have, it's not just like, yeah, sure, it's cool, it looks great on the resume, and it may help the career and things like that, but I'm not as interested in that anymore, because this is just such a cool thing. And that's a really, I think, powerful shift in terms of like what they have to offer, right? Mm-hmm. And it's been, like I said, super reinvigorating spending these last few years getting into the real-time work. All the things that we can offer, all the things that we can do, like I don't know where those boundaries are, and that's never happened to me. And like it's always, I've been learning the VFX pipeline and learning all the different ways you could do VFX, but I always knew sort of where that edge was, right? Of like, this is what VFX is, this is what we can offer, that's it, right? And but this feels like I'm not sure. Like, I don't think LED walls and IC VFX are the end. I think we can keep pushing this. There's other innovations that people haven't thought of yet, that it's, there's going to be new techniques. And I feel like this is the way to open that gate, right?
Yeah, no, I think it's exciting. It's a new blue ocean, rather than like the typical stuff that we're used to. And that's fascinating, because it's just, we don't usually have that. Like I was chatting with Ben Grossman. He's he is the founder of Magnopus, last weekend. And it was just interesting hearing him talking about visual effects, like as if it was his previous career. I mean, and it literally is how he was referring to it. It was just like, because he's doing VR and AR and MR and XR and all the other Rs that are around these days. But it was just interesting to actually, like, my interpretation is that it's visual effects, but just to hear someone actually differentiate of like, oh yeah, the VFX stuff we did back then, like that's, the problem with that industry is blah, blah, blah. It's like, but okay, you're in a whole other world. And that's just it. Even though you are technically in VFX, you're in this whole other area that, as you mentioned, like there's this infinite amount of new opportunity that previously it would be you're in video games or your film, and even VFX, it's like TV and film and episodics and blah, blah, blah. But like, it's still post. And that's what's fascinated me about virtual production is like, at the very beginning, I'm like, where do the budgets come into play? Like now you're pre-production, now you're art department, now you're set, you're all these different areas. So it is like a whole new way to reset the way that we do things.
Totally. Yeah. I can kind of relate to that like looking back and thinking, oh, like, oh yeah, when I worked at VFX, like I don't have it. I haven't quite gone that far, but I can see where, he gets that from, for sure. We are seeing a little bit of that now, where we'll have jobs come in where we are integrating with the VFX pipeline, where we'll like have episodic shows where we're doing final pixels, and that's great. Those are interesting because that we've got a mix of our team and their team. We bring their, like for instance, their lighters in. We'll say, all right, look, we don't have enough RT people to support rendering out this entire 4 episodes of 40 shots each, right? There's hundreds of shots to go through here. Let us teach you enough to get to the point where you can hit the render button. And we're teaching the VFX lighters how to use Unreal to a certain extent. For instance, right now I've got a show where we have a one of our asset artists, or previous life asset artists, one of our previous life matte painters. Both are now Unreal Engine sort of TDs. And they are integrated with V-Ray and Houdini lighters, and they all 4 are rendering out shots from the engine and from V-Ray, and so they're it's just another tool, and so that team right there is creating some great content, but they're working with comp very heavily, trying to come up with the the final frontier for Unreal Engine, which is render passes, right? Like, let's just give me an alpha. Come on. Like, so we do have that type of integration, and that is great to see and great to be a part of. And so we're not totally unchained from it, but we do have those other jobs where we're doing those AR experiences. We're doing full cinematic trailers for game trailers and things like that, where we never leave the engine. We're doing, previz, post-viz jobs. Those post-viz jobs, again, we're working with the post-production team. And then we're also, we do like right now, one of the big things that's being asked for of us a lot, and this is a repeated request for the studio as a whole, is crowds. We're trying to work out, the best way to do a crowd system, or several different crowd systems. We have a bunch of different approaches for it now too. And some of those are going to be delivered as in-engine products. Some of those are going to be delivered as frames, and so, yeah, it's again, like, it's that generalist feel, except to like, it's instead of being a generalist as an artist, it's like the department is sort of a generalist, where it can do the next gen stuff, but it still does the VFX stuff as well.
What I was going to bring up was Portal No Escape. To put my
oh yes,
because I am familiar with it. I saw it at one point. I think I looked it up. It was like 27 million views or something crazy. But what was that experience like? Because that was at the beginning of your career, right?
That was, and so it was a weird one. Look, I enjoyed it. I appreciated it. That one came out of nowhere. I was working with an artist, John Chesson, and he was friends with Dan, who did the spot. And then and I had no idea who these guys were. I was working with John, and he was a great guy. And he was like, "Hey man, we need some help." And I was like, "Great, sure, no problem." And so, like, did some rigging, and ended up, and it just kept growing. And I was kind of getting annoyed with it. I was like, "Wait, you want me to do animation? And wait, you want me to do lighting now?" And like, it's just, they were basically like, "Can you do all the CG?" And I was like, "Yes." And so, I mean, it wasn't all of it. I think there were other CG artists on it, but God, yeah, I was like happy to help, and then hung out with those guys, helped them, was there for like their flame session or whatever when they were putting the finishing touches on it or whatever. And I just thought it was like a cool little thing. And then it blew up, and it just exploded, and Dan's career just exploded. And like time, the only other time I've seen him since then was at like an E3 conference, where he was like, speaking at like a major thing, and like then he was just off. There he goes. And that was, yeah, it was a, like I said, it was a weird experience, just in and out, but it was a very, and I still keep in touch with a lot of the artists that were working on it, and they're all upper echelon of their careers now as well, like big time, comp soups and things like that. So.
Cool. Yeah, it's kind of funny. You can get thrown into like random projects where you have no idea.
Totally
it's
random.
Like, oh, this would be fun. It'd be great to help out. And
it was super fun, but at the time, I can't remember. I think I was just really busy with something at Zoic, and I was probably teaching at the same time, and I was just like annoyed. more than anything else. I was like, this is great and all, but I don't want to do it.
You mentioned earlier about liking to teach a lot. Like, how important do you think it is to give back to the industry and to help others? Because, like, again, like as you mentioned, using Google or anything else, like for shit to be Googleable, it means that it has to have people go and contribute content. So for you, like, how important is it to not only to teach but to give back to the industry?
Totally. My main thing, and like one of the main reasons I do teach, is because I saw a lot of this when I finally got to the point where I was like comfortable in my own skin working in a visual effects shop, and didn't feel like I didn't have the imposter syndrome, and didn't feel like a noob or anything, and I feel like I understood enough, right, and I felt cheated, right, because the whole thing for like many, and this may or may not be as prevalent now, but it was everyone's always putting out an image of themselves, that is like, I know this, and making things seem more complicated than they are, right? Like I finally got to the point where I understood everything. I was like, wait a minute, this isn't hard. Like, I mean, it is for sure. It takes time, it takes investment, but like, I guess part of that comes from being a TD and a problem solver. Like my inherent skill, I guess, is breaking down complicated issues into simple things, right? And compartmentalizing things. And so when I finally got to that point where I could compartmentalize, like, the industry, I was like, wait a minute, you guys are making this seem way more technical and way more tough than it is. And like, or either that, or I was just like really good at breaking things down and explaining them in simple terms. And so either way, I was like, I should share this, right? And so that's my whole thing when I'm teaching is like, look, there's a lot of information out there and they make it seem hard and difficult and unapproachable and just technical, right? And let me break it down to you in simple terms and like, the core concepts and things that you can understand. And like, I love the aha moments, like, so I thrive on that. And so I try to do my best to get as many aha moments as I can by like, realizing when someone's stumbling and struggling and being like stopping and just like, all right, what is it? And a lot of the times it's them overcomplicating it themselves because that's what they think it is. They think it's complicated. And I'm like, stop. So that's a major motivator for me, is just trying to help people get over their fear and their complication of like, this is a difficult thing and therefore I have to try hard. It's like, just relax and then, you'll get it. I just enjoy it. I just enjoy, like, after doing, the 9 to 6 of just running through jobs and running through other, it's a lot of, again, it's work, right? So there's a limited amount of art involved at a certain point where it's, you're doing art, but it's not yours. It's it's all the client's arts, and it's great. A lot of them have great visions, and I'm so lucky and happy to be working on so many people's great projects. They're not my projects, and so the classroom kind of offered me that escape of like, all right, we're going to work on my project. This is my character, or whatever, or the class. We collaborate sometimes as a class. We just did that ICVFX thing where we built a scene together. We did the VAD work. We put the end display into it. We did all the technical stuff, but we, like, as a group, we then went out and shot a spec commercial on an LED wall. And that was like our final takeaway for the course and stuff. And so that was a collaborative effort, and it was very cool, and very rewarding. Right. So yeah, that's, I really enjoyed it. And I don't see myself stopping teaching anytime soon, but I also don't see myself diving fully into it, really. Like I really thrive on,
it's an outlet.
Yeah, exactly. It's an outlet for me. So
I think that's just worth kind of noting too, that even just telling people like, hey, whether it is complicated or not, it doesn't always need to be, because I think people can, in some situations make things out or assume that everything has to be difficult. And it's not until someone can present them with, it doesn't need to be difficult. Just because, it feels daunting at first doesn't mean that you need to be doing all, like, learning Maya doesn't mean that you need to learn Mel. It doesn't mean that you need to go and go through all these other hoops. And sometimes it is about actually figuring out where the shortcuts are. And then once you feel not even confident, it's like once you get a few wins, then you can say, okay, well, what's the shit over here that I've been staying away from? And you can start to introduce that. Yeah,
there was like I said, there was a time in my career where I had, it was before I went to full generalist, where it was like, I could go the technical director route and dive fully in, and I just didn't like coding. I just didn't. That was part of one of the motivators for me. I was like, well, I'm not going to make a very good TD if I don't like to do Mel or Python very much. And again, with the whole reinvigorating thing, like using blueprints and stuff inside the engine is like, because I know how to craft a script. I know what I want to do. I can read the language. I always tell people I can read scripts and stuff. It's a lot. That's what I would say to people that are intimidated by that side of the work, and learn how to read what the script is trying to do. Don't bother with syntax, like, because that's me. I'm just like, there's 100 different types of code. They all have their own syntax, and that's what trips me up. And like the visual scripting is great, because that, for me, it's like, I know what I'm trying to do. Just give me some nodes to do it.
I actually learned to code from Mel, oddly enough, but like I hate Mel, but I think in a lot of ways, like, learning something like that, it makes it a lot easier later to be like, okay, cool, like there's this easy stuff over here. And Python, personally, I think for anyone who wanted to learn, like Python's a good one to start with, just because it's pretty
Yeah.
clean and simple. It's not overkill. Whereas like C++, other languages, which I'm not like, I wouldn't even say I know that these days, but it's, you know, that's where it's just like, holy, I mean, if you look at technically, Python is actually a wrapper for C++, and C++ is a wrapper for assembly. So you've kind of got this like hierarchy of languages just trying to simplify.
Yeah,
Simplify.
exactly.
But the visual side of things is where it's even easier.
Yeah.
And that's just it. Like these days, you don't need to code to still have conditional statements. Like you look at any particle network, with the exception of Maya, because Maya's still stuck in 2003, but Houdini, Max, whatever the hell, Blender, you know, you can start to see like, I get this, and I can plug it in here and say, if the sphere is 10 units big, then or bigger, then do this or that. And once you start to understand some of these like really basic concepts, then you can pretty much do anything.
Yeah, totally.
I'm curious, like just to touch on blueprints, like where do you see the power of blueprints, and like if you could kind of explain a bit of the constraints that you have working within them, because obviously writing C++ plugins for Unreal, you can do a lot more, but blueprints are a safe bet for a lot of people. Even if it is like just getting Datasmith to be able to import an object, strip out all the crap, and then just like clean up a mesh or something. Like there's simple processes you can put together very easily with recipes to do a lot.
Like I am but one wing of a trifecta of this real-time department, and my compatriot on the other side is an old school visual effects guy, and he's amazing, and I'm so happy to have him. But like, he wouldn't ever put himself on the box. He's like, he'll pick it up every now and again, but it works out well. We're like, 3 of the 4 Golden Girls, I guess, but and I'm definitely the Blanche. But no, like blueprints, super powerful. And that's the thing, is it's funny because I'm trying to craft a blueprints class right now, and I'm like, how do I hone this down to just one like 4-week course, right? Because it's such a huge thing. It's like you mentioned plugins. It's like you don't need to craft a plugin necessarily, because you can do it all in blueprints, right? And like crafting a plugin is just kind of wrapping everything up into one nice little nested place, but it is super powerful. And then, and I'm still learning to utilize it to its fullest, right? But there's more to do inside of blueprints or with blueprints than I feel like you could offer a visual effects pipeline necessarily. Like, and then that is to say, to hark back on what we were talking about earlier, like the possibilities are a little bit, more expanded. There's like a lot of the stuff that you could do with AR. For instance, we're doing a lot of AR work with Fox Sports right now, and almost all of that stuff is blueprinted out. Like all of the actions and stuff, and all the live action, broadcast design stuff is very, very cool. And there's other programs out there like Reality Engine and Pixitope and things like that tie into. They're sort of a carbon copy of the Unreal Engine, and they have sort of their own plugins and blueprints preloaded as part of that engine, and they will allow you to set up things like triggers to trigger live on-screen graphics or animations, and all the Weather Channel stuff, all of the Fox Sports stuff, all of that is determined, and they basically they run it like a board operator runs lights on set, right? So that you have a board set up where you're triggering different animations. And for instance, we do the NASCAR work for Fox Sports, and so when they're talking about like 15 drivers, they can just hit a couple of buttons and all those 15 drivers come up, and then the broadcaster can walk around and give information, and so it's a live interactive thing and stuff like that. So it's like I was saying, we're moving away from that visual effects workflow, because of this stuff is like it caters to live events. And so anything you can do inside of a game, most of the games are built off of blueprints or some Unity's version of blueprints, and all of that stuff. When you start to apply that to either visual effects or a live broadcast sort of thing, like the possibilities are endless. It's super powerful. And the fact that you can also because the foundation for characters is blueprints as well, and that's one of the things that I'm hoping to try to start, pushing things into, and you're starting to see a little bit of it now, is people taking that next step, of the ICVFX. It's not just backgrounds, right? We're starting to see creatures making their way onto LED walls, and like that's one of the things that I'm loving to try to start testing out and setting up is a live action person in an Extend suit or something like that, driving an animated creature that's maybe not bipedal, maybe completely different. Like their motions are maybe not one-to-one with the creature that's on the screen, but it does translate somehow, and you can have foreground talent interacting with a CG creature on the LED wall, on the LED volume, and things as a midground or background talent and things like that. So that type of stuff, is where I'm trying to push into now, and trying to set that type of work up, and and just trying to innovate and trying to like take that next step. It's like, okay, cool, we've mastered dirt and sand and different environments, and sometimes trees inside of LED walls. Like now where can we push it now? What's next?
That's super exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing where all that goes. Live events, I think, is really fascinating. Like once I was in Vegas, and I think I posted something on Instagram, and the guys at UFC saw, I guess that was in Vegas, they're like, do you want to come to UFC headquarters and hang out? So I end up going and checking out all the stuff that they're doing, especially in the graphics department. And it's just pretty fascinating to kind of see like the amount of stuff that you build up, but then you can repurpose 1,000 times. But it's just, eventually it is where it's more about like real-time triggering everything to come on screen at certain times. But like, yeah, it's like a lot of After Effects and just a lot of as you mentioned before, a shitload of alphas. But it's pretty interesting just to kind of see the different mediums that we kind of work within, because I think a lot of times we think, like I said before, games, TV episodics, and film, but like there is so many different areas inside of 3D and inside of graphics in general that like you can branch into that are just completely away from like what we typically classify as like VFX or 3D.
Yeah, it's amazing to see the expansion into a lot of these spaces, and it's invigorating for me. It's like when I started in visual effects, I was like, okay, cool, movies, TV, commercials, this is what we're doing, right? And then like it was funny when I first got the glimpse of it. We had a commercial for HoloLens when they first developed the HoloLens, and then we had an early version of that come in, and we were helping Microsoft set up a I think it was just an internal commercial for that, but we got our hands on it, and like that was the first time we were doing like full CG, but it was for a something it's like mixed reality, and getting to use mixed reality before we hit the market and stuff, and like that was the glimpse of like oh, that's cool. Maybe it's not just gonna be CG and VFX. Maybe there's something else there. It's a great space to be in. I'm enjoying the sandbox, right? There's tons of ideas out there.
Where do you see virtual production heading? And I mean, you kind of already mentioned like interacting with characters, which is interesting by itself, but like, where do you see all of this technology in general kind of heading a few years from now?
Who knows, right? There's a ton of cool places it could go. I, like you said, you were talking to sorry, I'm blanking on the name, but yeah, the fellow from doing the AR work. That's another place that I think that we're going to see a lot of leaps and bounds, and I think it's going to start to tie in with more real world experiences, right? Like we're gonna, because I was thinking about this the other day, the idea of AR theater, right? Because I don't know if you saw the thing on it was all over LinkedIn a little while ago, where they had a stage performance. They were utilizing LED walls, and they kind of changed perspective by like shifting the engine, and then they shifted the wall and things like that. It was very cool. Very, neat little performance that they were doing there. But things like that, and it got me thinking about maybe you could have an experience where you have an AR theater where everyone there gets like the Google Glass, or like 3D glasses back in the 70s, right? Let's take it back to that, where you get AR glasses when you enter the theater, and you're, instead of sitting in there just watching a movie happen, the movie's coming into your space. It's not just 3D, because 3D's kind of run its course, right? The 3D movies,
it's
like
beaten
that, but
to death.
I would like to see it where if we redesign sort of a theatrical space to include AR, right? You can't just have a normal theater seating where you're stacked up on top of each other. You've got to kind of have a more intimate space that opens it up, for MSG Sphere that's going up in Las Vegas right now. You mentioned Las Vegas, that type of experience is ripe for integrating like AR elements. They're gonna, they have this massive screen, 100 times bigger than an IMAX theater that's going up, and LED wall stuff on top of there that you're gonna be able to see just like tons and tons of stuff. But it's also, it gives you such a giant volume inside of that sphere when you're in there that, like, why not put AR elements in there? And so, I'm sorry if they were working on it. I don't know if they're not. Maybe I'm giving them free ideas right now. But definitely, like, I can see, like, your background right now. You've got fish swimming back there. If you're going to MSG Sphere and you're seeing, you have an aquatic experience happening there, why not have a shark come swim through the AR space or whatever? So yeah, I can see like a lot of expansion in the MR, AR. The live action, broadcast stuff, as well as I think, you'll start to see a shift in visual effects pipelines, like integrating the engine to be more and more as a regular tool. And I think Andrew mentioned this, Andrew Orloff, when you had him on the podcast a while ago, but the experience that our clients are having with interacting with this is just, it's next level. They're loving it. Like the fact that we can, not only just set up a Zoom call where you're directing an Unreal environment with them, kind of talking to you, but we can, there's also you have the ability to set up, certain controls and send them to them as a web page, right? So like if I wanted to say, give them control of like light manipulation or, certain, moving things around in the scene and stuff, I can set up a website within Unreal and then send them that portal, and then they can pull it up on their laptop or whatever and move lights around it. And like, it's a very interactive experience.
Doing that right now, actually.
Yeah.
Because we're doing that with pixel streaming with Stadia. And yes, you build a wrapper around it. You can have a web page controlling like you moving through 3D.
Absolutely. Yeah. And even like if you take it to the ones that are super tech savvy, you can get into VR and have those tech scouting sessions and things like that. I'm finding that that's not as prevalent as I once thought it was. Again, people think things are super complicated. It's not. It's, you get to the top and it's like, oh wait, it's still pretty simple, Mm-hmm. So yeah, it affords itself. There's a lot of places that you could push expansion into, and it's I think as it relates to the visual effects pipelines, it is going to be not very long before it is an everyday tool, just like the Houdinis and Maya's autos. None of those are going anywhere, right? They're still going to be useful, but I think Unreal is going to be in that conversation, and it totally didn't take me very long to get there, and I don't think it's taken anyone else very long either. There's very few holdouts.
I was chatting with Doug Roble. He was the oldest employee at Digital Domain, but he just left recently to go to Meta. But actually, he did a TED talk on performance capture, and we ended up doing a panel with Google and a few other people, and we're all talking about AI. And it's just one of those things. Like, he made a statement that I thought was really fascinating, which was that animation in the next 5 years is going to completely change, where animators won't be animating with keyframes anymore. And it was such a bold statement because it's also one of the oldest mediums. It's like saying you don't need to model anymore because photogrammetry and LiDAR and NERF and all the other tech that's coming out at the moment. But in a way, you're like, yeah, bullshit. You're always going to need to clean up meshes. You're always going to need the model, and what if it's Pixar or something? But it's a pretty bold statement to say, in general, let's say for a lot of more realistic human animation, such as with MetaHuman, the fact that you might end up animating now with your phone, you'll just talk into your phone rather than instead of an animator having a mirror next to their desk, they literally have a phone, and the phone is actually animating for them. It's kind of fascinating to kind of see all the kind of innovation that's just popping up all over the place at the moment.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation too, because you're seeing the same thing right now with the Midjourney. And all the concept artists thinking, but no, you're still going to need to have a certain degree of talent in order to operate the AI to get the image that you're trying to achieve, right? And if you can't, then what, right? Then you've got to rely on your own skills as a concept artist, right? And so I think there's a lot of that, in what you're saying in terms of animation. And it's they're still going to need to be specialized because just because anybody can do it and there's accessibility there doesn't mean that they're going to be good at it. And I think we've already seen that with the TV being replaced by TikTok and YouTube and Vine and all that stuff. My kids don't watch TV. My kids watch TikTok. They watch Vine. And and Vine's been dead for 10 years and they're still watching Vines on YouTube. But I don't find it entertaining. It's definitely not talented, except for a very few, and those could very easily be working in the television industry, right? And so there's just having accessibility, I don't think is enough, to get you to that point to where people want to see it because it's talented or entertaining, not outside of just pure whatever people consider TikTok to be entertaining.
I'm with you. My wife will be downstairs, and I assume she's watching TV, and she's just sitting on her phone, like on the couch for hours on end. So, I guess like as my final question is kind of tying into everything we're talking about, which would just be: is there any particular technology or like any kind of innovations that you've got your eye on that are coming down the pipe? Like, to
be honest, I'm so head down as a lot of the time that I'm living it. I'm in it. I'm
Seriously,
everything that I'm doing right now excites me. And if I look up, it's going to scare me.
But it's so true. Like we are in it right now. That's the exciting thing, is like there is so much stuff that a few years back, even AI was one of those like, well, when AI happens kind of thing. Like we're literally living in, like, if you're on 2-minute papers on YouTube any day, you see like all the innovation that's just coming around the corner all the time.
Totally. Yeah. It feels like it's happening so fast. And this, especially I've been using Unreal for 4 years and it's still new to me. There's still days I open it and I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? And so, yeah, it's like, there's a lot of stuff that I'm doing that excites me right now that if that I'm like, let me take a moment and enjoy this, And so, yeah, I see the Mid-Journey stuff, the AI stuff, and I see, like MetaHumans are amazing but they're still beta, like it's let it get out of beta before we're putting it into every single thing. But we're not going to do that. We're going to put it into everything. I'm using it right now in many places. I think there's probably a lot of interesting stuff coming down the pipe. And I think those things happen sort of organically as we're using and working with the latest and greatest of technologies that are available to us now. And there's just that spark, that aha moment, where it's like, oh shit, we could do this, and then that just all of a sudden becomes like the next big thing, and there's probably so many of those moments that have gotten missed because people just don't follow through. So and that's one of the things that I think is great about Epic and their engagement level, right? Because if we have bi-weekly meetings with them, they follow through and they're like, hey, what's troubling you guys? Anything we can do to help or whatever, anything that you've found that's been beneficial and things like that. And so, more than any other software that I've ever interacted with, if I have an idea and I say, I think it would be really cool if we could do this, right? They're going to follow through with it and they're going to follow up on that and check it out and say, like, we actually agree. And then, they have that responsiveness and the ability and the willingness to do R&D and to play in those sort of places, especially because they're so new to visual effects. They're still sort of, finding their feet and saying, like, they're listening to this community so much and they have respect for us, we have respect for them. It's great. I think those innovations are going to be missed even less when you have companies like that paying attention.
Totally. Yeah, no, it's amazing. I'm always blown away by, what they're doing and how they're really leaning into the community. I mean, not to name names, but I feel like with Max Meyer, it's more just to do with the fact that, like, they're such a big company that M&E division isn't really as profitable as their other divisions. But
totally. Yeah.
It is one of those things that, they're just not as invested in the 3D customers.
I track with them and they're doing amazing things in so many other fields outside of visual effects. Like they're doing some amazing work it's profitable for them as well as it's good for the community. It's good for the planet, right? They are doing some really good stuff. Visual effects just isn't that thing right now. So
yeah, unfortunately. But no, again, this has been really great, man. I really appreciate you taking the time. Like, where can people go to find out more about you and, of course, your courses? You mentioned CG Pro. I know.
Actually, I wanted to commend you. I wanted to thank you and say appreciate you and the work that you do, finding people like myself, because I am not easy to find. Because this is a byproduct of working at the same place for 15 years. I don't have a great footprint online. I cop up to that right now. My website is garbage. I haven't visited in like 6 years. I don't update very often. Like when I started teaching with, especially with the CG Pro, I had to go through and then update my IMDb and update my website, make a new reel and all that stuff. And it was just tough. I just don't do it very often. So I appreciate you finding people like myself that are hiding in the shadows, and you know, you do some amazing interviews with great big names, but I also appreciate that you come, you know, you find us blue collar workers, I guess, and you know, you have some conversations with some real people as well. So kudos to you, sir.
I appreciate it, man. No, honestly, it's been really fun to chat, and yeah, always learning a lot. Plus, come on, like we love this shit, right? So it's
totally.
It's in our blood.
Totally. And to answer your question, LinkedIn is probably the best place to find me.
I'll make sure to link to everything in the show notes. Again, thank you so much.
Amazing.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you.